Am I wrong for letting my daughter show off her expensive things that she bought with her own money? My sister-in-law called my daughter spoiled for buying herself a MacBook with her own money during our family vacation. She humiliated my hardworking 21-year-old in front of everyone, claiming we had ruined her. My name is Rebecca, I'm 50 years old, and this is the story of how a family vacation became a battlefield over values, work ethic, and the price of success. What started as a celebration turned into accusations that cut so deep, they changed our family forever. Growing up, my brother Marcus and I were inseparable. We were only 2 years apart, and our parents raised us with strong values about hard work and earning what you have. Marcus was always the charmer, the one who could talk his way out of trouble, while I was the responsible one who followed rules and worked for everything I wanted. Despite our different personalities, we were close. We shared dreams of having families that would be as tight-knit as ours had been. When Marcus married Bethany 15 years ago, I was genuinely happy for him. She seemed sweet, if a bit sheltered, coming from a wealthy family where money was never a concern. But I thought that with Marcus's influence and our family's values, she'd adapt well. At their wedding, I remember thinking how lucky we were to be gaining a sister who would help us raise our children together, creating the kind of extended family we'd always dreamed of. Marcus and Bethany had their first child, Nick, a year later, followed by Tammy 2 years after that. Around the same time, my husband David and I welcomed our daughter Danica. From the beginning, our parenting styles were different, but I didn't think much of it initially. Bethany preferred to handle everything for her children, while David and I believed in teaching Danica independence from an early age. When the kids were little, these differences seemed minor. Bethany would pack elaborate lunches and handle every detail of Nick and Tammy's lives, while we taught Danica to make her own simple sandwiches and take responsibility for her belongings. They're just different approaches, I told myself when I noticed Bethany looking disapproving when 8-year-old Danica cleared her own plate after dinner. As the children grew, the differences became more pronounced. When Danica turned 15, she asked if she could get a part-time job at a local ice cream shop. David and I were proud of her initiative and helped her apply. She was responsible, showed up on time, and saved most of her earnings. Meanwhile, Nick and Tammy, now 17 and 15, had never expressed interest in working, and Bethany seemed to prefer it that way. They need to focus on their studies, she'd say when the topic came up. There's plenty of time for work later. But I noticed that neither of them was particularly focused on studies either. They spent most of their free time playing video games or hanging out with friends, while Danica balanced work, school, and still maintained excellent grades. By the time Danica turned 18, she was managing her own bank account, paying for her car insurance, and contributing to household expenses. She'd developed an impressive work ethic and had saved enough money to buy herself nice things occasionally. When she started college, she chose a school she could afford with her savings and a partial scholarship she'd earned through her grades and community service. The first real tension I noticed came during a family gathering 2 years ago. Danica had just bought herself a beautiful Marc Jacobs bag with money she'd saved from her job at a marketing firm where she worked part-time while attending college. She wasn't showing it off or being flashy about it, but Tammy noticed it immediately. "Wow, that's an expensive bag," Tammy said, her voice carrying an edge I hadn't heard before. "I wish I could afford something like that." "You could get a job," Danica replied kindly, not meaning any offense. "I've been saving for months to buy this." Bethany's face tightened. "Not everyone needs to work during college, Tammy. Your focus should be on your education." The moment passed, but I caught the look that passed between Bethany and Marcus. There was something there I hadn't seen before, resentment, maybe, or disapproval. I should have paid more attention, but I dismissed it as a minor family moment. Over the next year, I started noticing more comments. When Danica bought herself a new laptop for school with money she'd earned, Bethany mentioned how some families believed in providing everything their children needed without making them work. When Danica treated herself to a nice dinner with friends, there were subtle remarks about young people these days and their spending habits. I began to feel like I was walking on eggshells during family gatherings. David and I were proud of Danica's independence and work ethic, but it seemed like every achievement or purchase was somehow an indictment of how Marcus and Bethany were raising their children. The problem was, we genuinely didn't see it that way. We were just proud parents celebrating our daughter's success. The warning signs became impossible to ignore during a family barbecue last summer. Danica had just gotten a raise at work and was excited to share the news. She'd also mentioned that she was planning to upgrade her laptop to a MacBook Pro since her current one was dying and she needed something reliable for her graphic design classes. "A MacBook?" Bethany said, her voice sharp. "Those are incredibly expensive. Surely a regular laptop would do just fine for schoolwork." I've researched it thoroughly, Danica explained politely. For my major, I need something that can handle design software, and this is actually an investment in my career. I've been saving specifically for this. That's wonderful, honey, I said, genuinely proud of her careful planning and saving. But I caught Bethany rolling her eyes and whispering something to Marcus. Later, I overheard part of a conversation between them in the kitchen. Spoiling her rotten, Bethany was saying. No 20-year-old needs a MacBook that expensive. They're creating a monster. Maybe they just have different priorities, Marcus replied, but his voice lacked conviction. Different priorities? They're teaching her that money grows on trees. Look at how she spends compared to our kids. Our kids don't have jobs, Beth. That's the difference. Our kids don't need jobs. They're focusing on education, like normal college students should. I should have said something then. I should have walked into that kitchen and addressed the elephant in the room. But I didn't want to cause drama at a family gathering, and I convinced myself that it would blow over. That was my first mistake. The situation escalated when Marcus suggested we all take a family vacation together to Myrtle Beach. It'll be like old times, he said. The kids are all adults now, but we can still have fun together as a family. David and I agreed, thinking it would be a great opportunity to reconnect and create new memories. We planned a week-long trip, renting a large beach house where we could all stay together. Danica was excited about the vacation but also practical about it. She'd been working extra hours to save money for the trip and had set aside funds for activities, meals, and souvenirs. I want to be able to enjoy myself without worrying about money, she told me while packing. And I'd like to buy some nice gifts for my friends back home. I was proud of her foresight and planning. At 21, she was more financially responsible than many adults I knew. The first few days of the vacation went smoothly. We spent time on the beach, explored local attractions, and enjoyed family meals together. Danica was her usual generous self, offering to pay for ice cream for Nick and Tammy, picking up the tab for drinks when we stopped at a beachside cafe, and generally just being kind and inclusive. But I started noticing looks. When Danica pulled out her new MacBook to edit some photos she'd taken on the trip, Tammy stared at it with obvious envy. When Danica offered to buy lunch for everyone at a seafood restaurant, Bethany made a comment about young people being careless with money. When Danica bought souvenirs for her friends back home, I heard Nick mutter something about showing off. The tension was building, but I kept hoping it would resolve itself. I didn't want to confront the issue because I was afraid of ruining the vacation for everyone. That was my second mistake. The breaking point came on our fourth night. We'd planned a nice dinner at an upscale restaurant that overlooked the ocean. Danica had dressed nicely for the occasion, wearing a beautiful dress she'd bought for work presentations and carrying the Marc Jacobs bag she'd saved so hard to purchase. Throughout dinner, I could feel the tension building. Bethany kept making subtle comments about the extravagance of the restaurant, despite the fact that we were all splitting the bill evenly. She made pointed remarks about young people today and their spending habits. Tammy was sulking and barely speaking to anyone. Then it happened. Danica was showing Nick and Tammy some of the photos she'd edited on her MacBook, trying to be inclusive and share her interests with her cousins. The photos were beautiful. She'd gotten some stunning shots of the sunrise over the ocean and had enhanced them with her design skills. "These are amazing, Danica," Nick said, and for a moment, I thought maybe the tension was easing. But then Tammy spoke up. "I wish I had a MacBook like that. Mine is so old and slow." "Maybe you could get a job and save up for one," Danica suggested kindly. "It took me almost a year to save for this, but it was worth it." That's when Bethany exploded. "Enough," she said, her voice loud enough to turn heads at nearby tables. "I'm sick of this." "Sick of what?" David asked, genuinely confused. "Sick of watching you people spoil your daughter rotten while she flaunts it in front of my children. Look at her, designer bag, expensive laptop, new clothes. She's sitting here showing off like some kind of princess while my kids have to watch and want things they can't have." The restaurant went quiet around our table. Danica's face went pale, and she immediately closed her laptop. "I wasn't showing off," she said quietly. "I was just sharing the photos." "Oh, please," Bethany continued, her voice dripping with disdain. "You've been parading around all week with your expensive things, making my children feel inferior. And your parents just sit there beaming with pride like they've done something wonderful." "We have done something wonderful," I said, finding my voice. "We've raised a daughter who works hard for what she has." "Worked hard?" Bethany laughed bitterly. "She's 21 years old. What could she possibly know about hard work? You've clearly been funding this lifestyle and teaching her that money is no object." "That's not true," David said firmly. "Danica has worked since she was 15. She pays for her own car insurance, contributes to household expenses, and saved every penny for that laptop herself. Right, Bethany said sarcastically. A 21-year-old college student just happened to save up $3,000 for a laptop while working part-time. Do you think we're stupid? Danica looked like she was about to cry. I can show you my bank statements, she said quietly. I've been saving for almost a year. I don't want to see your bank statements, Bethany snapped. I want you to stop acting like a spoiled brat and show some consideration for others. That's when Marcus finally spoke up, but not in the way I expected. Maybe we should all just calm down, he said weakly. The kids don't need to hear this. The kids absolutely need to hear this, Bethany continued. Tammy and Nick need to understand that not everyone gets handed everything they want on a silver platter. Some of us believe in teaching our children the value of money instead of letting them spend it like water. I felt something break inside me. This woman was attacking my daughter, calling her spoiled and bratty, when Danica was one of the most hardworking and responsible young adults I knew. And my brother was just sitting there, letting it happen. That's enough, I said, standing up from the table. Danica, we're leaving. Good, Bethany said. Maybe now my children can enjoy the rest of their vacation without having to watch someone else's princess act. Danica was crying now, trying to pack up her laptop with shaking hands. The entire restaurant was watching as we gathered our things and left. Back at the beach house, Danica went straight to her room and locked the door. I could hear her crying through the walls, and it broke my heart. David and I sat in the living room, both of us shaken by what had just happened. I can't believe she said those things, David said, his voice quiet but angry. Danica works harder than most adults I know. I should have seen this coming, I replied. I should have addressed it months ago when I first noticed the resentment. An hour later, Marcus showed up at the house alone. He looked uncomfortable and avoided eye contact as he sat down across from us. Bethany's upset, he said, as if that explained everything. Bethany's upset? I repeated incredulously. She just humiliated our daughter in public, calling her spoiled and bratty, and Bethany's the one who's upset. Look, I know she came on strong, but she's been dealing with this for months. Tammy's been constantly comparing herself to Danica, wanting the same things, asking us to buy her expensive items. It's been really hard on Beth. So that's Danica's fault? David asked. Because she works hard and saves her money? No, that's not what I'm saying. But maybe you could talk to her about being more considerate. About not flaunting what she has. I stared at my brother, this man I'd grown up with, who had once shared my parents' values about hard work and earning what you have. When had he changed? When had he decided that success was something to hide instead of celebrate? Marcus, I said carefully, Danica wasn't flaunting anything. She was being generous with Nick and Tammy, paying for their snacks and drinks, sharing her interests with them. She's been nothing but kind to your children. I know, but what? But she should hide her success to make your children feel better about their choices? Should she pretend she doesn't have nice things that she worked hard to afford? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that changed everything. Tammy's been crying for days because she wants a MacBook like Danica's. She wants us to buy her one, but we can't afford it right now. Seeing Danica with all these nice things is making it harder. And there it was. The truth. This wasn't about Danica being spoiled or bratty. This was about their children wanting things they hadn't worked for, and instead of using it as a teaching moment about effort and earning, they'd chosen to blame us for raising a successful daughter. Then maybe this is a good opportunity to talk to Tammy about getting a job, I suggested. About saving money and working toward goals. She shouldn't have to work during college. She should be focusing on her education. Danica manages to do both. She has a 3.8 GPA while working 20 hours a week. Not everyone can do that. Not everyone wants to do that, David corrected. There's a difference. The conversation continued for another hour, going in circles. Marcus kept defending Bethany and making excuses for their children's behavior, while David and I tried to understand how we'd become the villains for raising a responsible, hardworking daughter. Finally, Marcus left, and we were alone with our thoughts and our crying daughter. I knocked on Danica's door. Honey, can I come in? She opened the door, her eyes red from crying. Mom, did I do something wrong? Am I really spoiled? My heart broke all over again. This beautiful, kind, hardworking young woman was questioning herself because of her aunt's jealousy and cruelty. No, baby, I said, hugging her tight. You're not spoiled. You're not bratty. You're everything your father and I hoped you'd become: independent, responsible, generous, and kind. Don't let anyone make you feel bad about your success. But maybe I shouldn't have brought the MacBook. Maybe I should have been more careful about spending money. You earned that money. You saved for almost a year to buy something you needed for school and work. You have nothing to be ashamed of. Then why does Aunt Bethany hate me so much? I sat down on her bed, choosing my words carefully. Sometimes when people feel insecure about their own choices, they attack others instead of looking at themselves. What happened tonight wasn't about you. It was about their family's struggles with entitlement and jealousy. Are we leaving? She asked. Do you want to leave? She nodded. I don't want to ruin everyone else's vacation, but I don't think I can face them again. You're not ruining anything. And you don't have to face anyone you don't want to face. We packed that night and left early the next morning. I left a note for Marcus, telling him we decided to cut our vacation short and that we'd talk when we got home. The drive home was long and quiet. Danica slept most of the way, exhausted from the emotional trauma of the night before. David and I took turns driving and talking quietly about what had happened and what it meant for our family relationships. I keep thinking about when we were kids, I told David during one of his driving shifts. Marcus and I were so close. We shared the same values, the same beliefs about hard work and earning what you have. When did that change? Maybe it didn't change for him, David suggested. Maybe it changed for Bethany, and he's going along with it to keep the peace. But that's not the Marcus I grew up with. The Marcus I knew would have stood up for what's right, especially when it came to family. When we got home, I called my parents to tell them what had happened. They were shocked and disappointed, especially my father, who had always been proud of Danica's work ethic. That girl has more sense and responsibility at 21 than most people have at 40, he said angrily. How dare they call her spoiled for working hard and earning her success? My mother was equally upset. I can't believe Marcus sat there and let his wife attack Danica like that. What's happened to him? Over the next few days, the story spread through our extended family. Marcus and Bethany had apparently been telling their version of events, painting us as the villains who were raising an entitled, spoiled daughter. But other family members who knew Danica well weren't buying it. My cousin Sarah called to express her support. I've watched Danica grow up, she said. That girl has been working since she was 15. She's one of the most responsible young adults I know. Anyone calling her spoiled is either jealous or delusional. My Aunt Patricia was more direct. Bethany's always been jealous of other people's success. Remember when she complained that your wedding was too fancy? Or when she made snide comments about your promotion? This is just more of the same. But not everyone was on our side. Some family members thought we should have been more sensitive to Nick and Tammy's feelings. They suggested that maybe we had been flaunting our success and should have been more considerate. Maybe Danica could have left the expensive things at home, my cousin Jennifer suggested during a phone call. Just to keep the peace. So she should hide her success to make other people feel better about their failures? I asked. That's not what I'm saying. But family harmony is important too. I hung up that call feeling frustrated and alone. It seemed like some people were more concerned with keeping the peace than with supporting what was right. The breaking point came 2 weeks later when Marcus called. Beth wants to talk, he said without preamble. She feels like maybe things got out of hand, and she wants to clear the air. What does she want to clear the air about? The part where she called our daughter spoiled and bratty in public? Or the part where she accused us of raising a monster? Look, everyone said things they didn't mean. Maybe we can all just move past this. Move past it? Marcus, your wife humiliated my daughter. She made her cry. She attacked her character and questioned our parenting. And you sat there and let it happen. I tried to defuse the situation. No, you tried to avoid conflict. There's a difference. There was a long pause. Then Marcus said something that ended our relationship forever. Maybe if you'd raised Danica to be more humble, none of this would have happened. I felt like I'd been slapped. My own brother, the man I'd grown up with, was blaming my daughter for being successful and blaming me for raising her to be proud of her achievements. Humble? I repeated. You want her to be humble about working hard and earning her success? You want her to apologize for being responsible and independent? I want her to consider other people's feelings. She does consider other people's feelings. She paid for Nick and Tammy's snacks all week. She included them in activities, shared her interests with them, and was nothing but kind. But apparently, that's not enough. Apparently, she should also hide her success so your children don't have to confront their own laziness. That's not fair, isn't it? Marcus, when's the last time Nick or Tammy worked for anything? When's the last time they saved money for something they wanted instead of just asking you to buy it for them? Silence. That's what I thought. This isn't about Danica being spoiled. This is about your children being spoiled, and instead of addressing that, you're attacking us for doing what you should have done years ago. I think we should take a break from each other, Marcus said finally. I think you're right. That was the last conversation I had with my brother. It's been 6 months now, and we haven't spoken since. The aftermath was swift and decisive. Word of the conversation spread through our family, and people were forced to choose sides. Most of our older relatives, who remembered the values we'd all been raised with, supported us. They couldn't believe that Marcus would blame a hardworking young woman for making others feel bad about their own choices. But some of the younger family members, particularly those with children of their own, seemed to side with Marcus and Bethany. They talked about family harmony and suggested that maybe we should have been more considerate of others' feelings. The split was painful but clarifying. It showed us who in our family truly shared our values and who was more concerned with avoiding conflict than supporting what was right. Danica struggled with the fallout for weeks. She kept questioning herself, wondering if she really was spoiled or insensitive. But gradually, with our support and the support of friends who knew her true character, she began to heal. "I've decided something," she told me one evening as we sat on our back porch, watching the sunset. "I'm not going to apologize for working hard. I'm not going to hide my success to make other people feel better about their choices. And I'm not going to let anyone make me feel guilty for being independent and responsible. I'm proud of you," I said, meaning every word. "I learned that from you and Dad. You taught me that hard work has value, that success should be celebrated, not hidden. I'm not going to let Uncle Marcus and Aunt Bethany change that." As I think about this whole situation now, 6 months later, I realize that as painful as it was, it taught us something important about our values and our family. It showed us that some people will always resent others' success instead of working to achieve their own. It showed us that some family members will choose enabling over accountability, comfort over growth. But it also showed us the strength of our convictions and the importance of standing up for what's right, even when it's hard. Danica learned that her success is nothing to be ashamed of, that her hard work has value, and that she doesn't need to dim her light to make others feel better about their darkness. David and I learned that sometimes protecting your children means cutting ties with people who would hurt them, even if those people are family. We learned that blood doesn't always mean loyalty, and that sometimes the people who claim to love you are the ones who hurt you the most. Most importantly, we learned that we raised our daughter right. In a world full of entitlement and instant gratification, we raised a young woman who understands the value of hard work, who appreciates what she has because she earned it, and who treats others with kindness and generosity despite their jealousy and resentment. Today, Danica is thriving. She graduated college with honors, landed a great job at a design firm, and recently bought her first apartment with money she saved herself. She's confident, independent, and successful, everything we hoped she'd become. Sometimes she asks about Uncle Marcus and her cousins, and I can see the sadness in her eyes. She misses the family relationships we used to have, the cousins she grew up with, the uncle who used to make her laugh. But she also understands that some people can't celebrate others' success, and that their inability to do so says nothing about her and everything about them. As for Marcus and Bethany, I hear through the family grapevine that Nick dropped out of college and is living at home, playing video games and showing no interest in working or pursuing any goals. Tammy is struggling academically and socially, apparently still focused more on what others have than on what she could achieve herself. I feel sad for them, for the opportunities they're missing and the lessons they're not learning. But I also feel grateful that we chose a different path for our daughter, that we taught her the value of hard work and the pride that comes from earning your success. Sometimes people ask me if I regret the way things turned out, if I wish I'd handled things differently during that vacation. The answer is complicated. I regret that our family was torn apart. I regret that Danica was hurt by people who should have loved and supported her. I regret that my brother chose his wife's jealousy over his sister's relationship. But I don't regret standing up for my daughter. I don't regret defending her right to be proud of her success. And I don't regret the values we instilled in her, even if they made other family members uncomfortable. Because at the end of the day, success isn't something to hide from. Hard work isn't something to be ashamed of. And raising a child to be independent, responsible, and successful isn't spoiling them, it's preparing them for life. If that makes us the villains in some people's stories, so be it. We'd rather be villains who raised a successful daughter than heroes who enabled failure. Danica taught us that sometimes the price of doing right is losing people who were never really on your side to begin with. And sometimes that's a price worth paying. If you enjoyed this story and it resonated with your own experiences with family dynamics and success, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Have you ever been criticized for your achievements or accused of being spoiled for working hard? Share your story in the comments below. Remember, your success is nothing to apologize for, and the people who truly love you will celebrate your achievements, not resent them.